Sometimes the poorest man leaves his children the richest inheritance. Ruth E. Renkel, fictional character created by Irma Bombeck. All right, good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. All right, what happened the last 2 days? I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to come clean. So I was watching the president's speech at the joint session, and I was taking notes. And mind you, I have been up since like 4:30, somewhere around there. And I got really, really tired about 30, 40 minutes in. And then I started noticing that I was just not paying attention. I was like, okay, whatever. I'll just, if something really catches my attention, I'll write that down. And because what I like to do is I like to take notes and then afterward go back and say, okay, which of these notes do I actually want to use? And so eventually I got to the point where I was almost like doing that thing where you're trying to watch a movie in bed and you're like falling asleep and you wake up you fall asleep for like maybe 2 minutes, you wake up and you're not sure how much of the movie you missed and you're like, okay, and you scroll back a little bit and you're like, all right, I'll continue on from here, and then you watch and then you just keep doing that like 2 or 3 times and then finally you're like, I think I'm just too tired to watch this movie. That's where I was getting to. So I was like, all right, let me go clean up and whatever I need to do and go to bed. And then I didn't wake up on time to finish watching the rest of the speech. And so I really couldn't talk about it, right? Like I had, like I so and I didn't have anything else to talk about. And so I was like, you know what? I need to do some other things anyway. So I started doing so I was like, I just cancel the show for the day. And then I started doing some maintenance. And then I started like reconfiguring my office. I told you about how there's some equipment changes going on. So I actually have now a monitor right here to the right, one back there with my laptop here. All my stuff kind of reorganized a little bit. And so we're gonna give it a go and see how everything works out. So now I can like look right here and I can see comments right away. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'll give any better commentary on the comments, but I got them there, right? They're there. So that's what's going on. All right. Today, we are going to talk about Andrew Tate because why not? Like I kind of debated on this. I was like, I don't know. Everybody's talking about it. I'm like, is it? I do not like Andrew Tate right up front. But I think the rationale that I'm going to give you today is different than what you're hearing from other people. So here's what I did. I watched the entirety of his appearance on Patrick Bet David. Almost 3.5 hours. Watched the entirety of it. And it was a long watch. I mean, I watched it on like 2x speed and then would stop and take notes wherever I wanted. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm actually not going to discuss his current cases in Romania or the UK or I guess now Florida. Suffice it to say, his cases are not dropped. He has to return later this month. So he's still going through the legal process. So be careful what the proponents, the supporters say. They're like, oh, he beat the case. He hasn't beat the case yet. They're not done yet. Now, maybe it's on a good trajectory. I don't know. I do believe that we should always hold innocent until proven guilty. However, let's make something clear. That's really, really applicable in the court of law. It's paramount. It's not really how it works in the real world when it comes to the court of public opinion. However, we have to be careful with the court of public opinion because if we condemn somebody very strongly, then when they go to court, they may not get a fair trial, right? Because if you've basically turned everybody against that person, they may be less objective. All right. Now, speaking of all that, the day that they arrived here in Florida, or maybe it was maybe the next day, but I think it was the day of, Governor DeSantis denounced Tate. He came out and he was all like, you know what? These are bad people. They shouldn't be welcome here in Florida. And then he directed his attorney general to look into them and open up a case. So the rumor is that one of the victims is here in Florida, and that's the pretext under which they're using. However, let's just be honest, because I am the most objective libertarian. Ron DeSantis is known for political stunts, not necessarily good ones, but he's kind of got this reputation. I believe this one is likely a political stunt as well. And so is Andrew Tate guilty? Maybe, maybe not. I don't really know. I know that right now the case has lost a little momentum in Romania over procedural issues. So we're not really going to discuss anything pertaining to, is the man guilty of human trafficking or assault and battery or any of these other things. So where do I stand on him? If a state or a government suspects a person has done a crime, they should investigate appropriately. If they find evidence, then they should take that person to trial. If the trial proves that they're guilty in the eyes of a body of peers, a jury, then they should be convicted and serve the appropriate consequences. Okay, so this applies to Andrew Tate. If there's evidence, then yes, Ron DeSantis is correct in pursuing it. Romania, the UK, whoever else might want to jump in on that. We have to be careful. We don't want to just say we don't like the guy and so therefore go find where he's guilty. What we do want to do is say, has somebody made a credible claim against him and said, hey, is there evidence of a crime? If there is, follow that process. But I think more importantly, and what I want to talk about today, more important than his case or cases, I think Andrew Tate represents an overcorrection to what the conservative right lacks, and that is masculine leadership. So, like I told you, I watched his latest podcast appearance on Patrick Bet-David, and it was fascinating and, again, long, 3 hours and 22 minutes. But you can get through it in half that time if you put it on 2x speed. There's no way that I could address everything that he said. This would be like an all-day podcast, and it's not that important. Nor am I going to try. But he did say a lot of things that I would actually agree with. And I think that's what we need to keep in mind as we're going through and we're talking about some of these other things. And I might even agree with why he said them. So, for example, let's get into our first little clip here. And so this is a snippet that comes from his recent podcast episode. I don't know where the line is with Patrick Bet-David. I don't know if I would get dinged, so I'm going to blur those videos. So I'm blurring all the videos. There's 2 different podcasts for which I will pull videos from him, and they're going to be blurred just to kind of keep me out of trouble with YouTube. So let me play this first video. And this is something that I would agree with on the same grounds for the same reason. So let's play that.
Because there are certain subjects where it is instantly snapping to black and white camps.
Right.
And those are the problems that never get fixed. Those are the problems that never get fixed. There has to be subjectivity and discussion in all things. And both sides can have a point. And it has to be discussed at large. So it's actually, I would make this point, actually, for the people who are truly fearful of Israel and truly fearful of Jewish influence, You hinder yourselves by not being open to rational conversations, by not being invited on speaking podcasts, by not being open to ideas, because you don't accept that not every single thing on the planet is the Jews. If you want to be reasonable and responsible and have interesting and open conversations, you'll get a lot further. But when you put up this wall of every single thing is Jews, every single thing they've ever done, every single thing, you're just going to destroy destroy your own movement.
Okay. So he's 100% correct there. And it applies more than just the Jews did it, right? There is criticism that you can have of anyone in any group, any of them. And then there's criticism that just goes too far. It starts becoming, a hammer in search of a nail. And you're just right up. And he's correct. And in any movement, whether it's, opposition to feminism, opposition to, banking cartels, whatever, right? You need to have a rational conversation about whatever it is that you're talking about. And you have to be willing to accept that maybe there are either some good things or some things weren't bad, right? Like, okay, this person, this group, I dislike them or I dislike the ideas that they're presenting. But in this particular case, I don't think this thing or this thing that they said is a problem. Like, we have to be willing to have that conversation. Otherwise, you give into the extremes. And when you give into the extremes, I think that's what happens. We basically get this yo-yo of back and forth, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. This extreme between the left and the right, where they're basically, you can think of it as ping pong, back and forth. Just continue back and forth. Or you can think of it as a pendulum swinging and it overcorrects, which I think is what we have going on here. All right. So I said something nice about him. And I'm not going to talk about his criminal allegations. So what is it that I dislike about Andrew Tate exactly? I mean, in his video, and he mentions a lot, and you'll see it in one of the clips, he talks about people being jealous of him. So am I just jealous because he's like, some hundreds of millions of, is worth some hundreds of millions of dollars, possibly close to $1 billion? No, I'm not jealous of him. Like he's not the only one that has more money than me. I have friends that have more money than me, right? That have more wealth than me. And so I'm not jealous of them him any more than I am of my own friends. So we can just take that argument right out the window. Like, it's not jealousy. For some people, it might be, right? And that's fair. But not everybody, speaking of extremes, not everybody is simply jealous of him. During the Patrick Bet David podcast, he was not asked a single tough question. And I thought that was quite astounding. Like, there were no really tough questions. And I'm not talking about related to the case. Maybe he just came over and said, look, I'll be on your podcast, but we really can't go into the details of the case because it's literally ongoing. Okay, fair enough. That makes sense. But the whole podcast episode, it came across as one big episode of right-wing talking points and explanation for those talking points by Andrew Tate. But my disdain has nothing to do with the right-wing views either. I'm not tied to the charges from Romania or the UK or potentially the charges to Florida. He should get a fair trial. And if he's found guilty, he should be punished accordingly. And if he's not found guilty, he should go free. Plain and simple. But I'm also not convinced of his counterclaims that the videos that people present of him that show him in a bad light, like that is evidence that's presented. I'm not convinced, as he says, that they're just simply missing the context in many cases of consent. So, for example, people will point out a video and they would say, well, he's, he did this, here's a video of him, talking about abusing a woman. Then he's like, well, we were into that. That was just kind of the thing we were into. Okay. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I can't and he's got his counter videos, as counter evidence, and I'm not going to spend time sorting through all that. So then, the question is like, what is it, DL, that that you dislike about him? I believe that Andrew Tate is a con artist and that he has built his wealth on scamming men. not only in the past, but currently as well. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Right after we get to some comments, go to intermission, and we'll come back and I will tell you, I will show you why, in his own words, why I believe that he's effectively a con artist and that he has scammed men and he doesn't really belong getting the kind of attention that he's getting, and then why. So let me turn my head over here now. I need to put another camera right here so that you guys can like see me when I look over at the comment section. So let me see what we got here in the comments. Um, Joe says, "Not the thumbnail I wanted to see at 7:30 in the morning." I apologize, but I gotta get people to come watch the show, right? If I put a picture of me on there and just said Andrew Tate, they're gonna be like, I don't know. So I got to put a picture of him so that people go, oh, talking about Andrew Tate, because like right now it's all the rage, and people are raging. Let's see what else. Do to do. Yes, Joe also said not the. He says, I'm sorry, I didn't watch it at all. Those speeches are always crap. Talking about the president's president addressing the joint session of Congress. Yes, that would have been one of the things that I would have talked about is how I think that the context of everything that he said, of course, he was going to say all these great things about. He's not going to get out there and be like, "I'm doing a terrible job. Work with me, bear with me as I iron things out." He's going to get up there like every other president, and he's going to say, "Here's how all things that I'm doing are great," because they're supposed to inspire confidence in people, the people that they have to work with, the American people, so on and so forth. You don't do that by getting up there and spilling the beans and saying, "Yeah, man, they're dragging me through the ringer. They're not cooperating." Like that's not how things work. So yeah, they're full of crap. And now I will say this: the Democrats rightfully took a beating for not. I don't think they applauded or gave a standing ovation on anything. And I'm like, really? Nothing? Not a single thing was worth standing up for? Like the little kid that became an honorary was it soldier? No, honorary something. I can't remember now. But he was he got like this honorary position and they couldn't even like the kid's got brain cancer and they can't even stand up and clap. Yeah. Oh, you know what? I forgot my music for the comments. So, yeah, I think it was full of crap, but I think we also saw how full of crap the other side is because they're so entrenched in their side that they can't even be like, yeah, this is a good thing. Actually, yeah, we'll admit that one's a good thing. So let's see what else we got here in the comments. Um, let's see. Do. Looking through else, see what else we got here. I really need to, Kagela says, I really need to take the time to read Atlas Shrugged. It is a good book. If you, oops, if you have the time, I would recommend the audio version if you're the kind of person that can listen and, especially to a story. And then you could speed it up a little bit because it is a thick book. It's like 900 pages or something like that. So, but it is a good, I definitely recommend reading or listening to it. Let's see. What else we got here? It looks like mostly comments in, amongst y'all, and that's good. Um, let's see here. I'm trying to look at some of these, chime in, but I got to try to read all the comments at the same time. That's why I got kind of one of the reasons why I got that music there. Um, do. Yes, Joe points out, he says, look, giving the kid an honorary whatever is obviously a political stunt. It always is. Like everybody anytime you go to or you watch one of these events and the president is like, all right, and in the audience today is so-and-so, a mother of three, blah, 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 or whoever, right? Just some regular person, not somebody part of his administration, not somebody he's working with, but like just regular person like me and you. Anytime somebody like that is there, they are basically a political prop. But that doesn't mean that what they're there for isn't a good thing. And I think, like, to me, the highlight of the evening was this 13-year-old boy getting an award, and he seemed almost overwhelmed. At least that's my impression. But I think that's cool. Like 13-year-olds, I mean, how cool would it be to go back to school and be like, yeah, I went to the president's speech and, he made me this honorary thing. I got this award. I got to meet these people, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's pretty cool. You know, he can wait to become jaded about all the politicians until he gets older like us. So no reason to be no reason to be jaded any sooner than you have to be. All right. I think that's all for the comments. Checking on Facebook comments here. Checking if you are watching on Twitter and you can comment, do so because I'm checking those comments too. But I don't see any other comments. So we will go to intermission. We'll come back and then I'll tell you what my beef is with Andrew Tate. So let's do that. Hey, Liberty fam, do me a favor. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button to my channel. And for the really serious folks out there, I want you to hit that bell so that you never miss an episode. By the way, if you want to support the show, head over to libertydad.locals.com and sign up. For $5, you can be part of this show. There, I'll engage supporters of the show. We'll discuss topics that you want me to talk about, response videos that you would like to see, or anything related to the show. And I'll even have a monthly subscribers only episode. By the way, I'm always looking for dads to join me for Dad Talk. That's my series where I invite everyday dads on to talk about what's important to them in the context of being a dad. No argument, no debate, and dads choose the topic. It's my way of raising dad voices. If you're a dad or you know a dad who has something to say, let's get connected. Episodes air live on Friday mornings or Friday evenings, whichever works best for dads. All right, let's get back to the show. Okay, so we're back. We're going to talk now about what my real beef with Andrew Tate is. It has, again, nothing to do with the charges from Romania or the UK or now Florida. I'm not so certain that that Ron DeSantis is doing anything other than playing a political stunt, trying to gain some sort of capital or something, because I just don't trust him. I've seen him play political stunts. So what's my beef? So here's a video, and it comes from Andrew Tate's own words. This is like 2 years old. And so this comes from the Full Resend podcast with, I don't really know who they are, but they're called the Nelk Boys, some group out of Canada. And so this video is from October of 2022. So it's relatively recent. And so he's talking about scamming men. Now, I've sped up the video in the essence of time. What I try to do is trim it down as much as possible so that we could listen to it with the proper amount of context. But now I got to speed it up a little bit just because it's it's about 5 minutes. So we're going to try to trim that down a little bit. So let's listen in and let's hear what initially got me saying, I don't think this Andrew Tate guy is such a good dude for our young people.
And that was the beginning of the empire. The two stayed, bought some laptops, sat them down, said, look, you're going to get this much percent. I'm going to get this much percent. So me and these two chicks, and they were about it, right? Because they're getting money as well. Me and these two chicks, we just start fucking hammering the webcam game.
By the way, we try to keep this family friendly. I wasn't going to spend all the time to try to bleep out all the profanities. So just let you know ahead of time, there are profanities in some of these videos, and that's just the way it has to be today.
Problem is, another thing I knew, when I talk about what women don't find, that women don't know what men find attractive, earlier on in this podcast, everything I said, the webcam company I was running proved that perfectly. The women who were on stream were beautiful, but they didn't have a fucking clue what to say. They were saying all the wrong shit, man. Every day they were saying the wrong shit, and we were losing customers.
Okay, so I want you to think about that. So he's saying that they've got this webcam business going, and he's got a couple of girls, and then he hires some staff, and they're doing this thing. But he's like, we're losing customers. What's going on? He's like, oh, well, the girls, they don't have the game. They're not exuding game. They're too plain. They're too boring, whatever. So this is his answer to getting the women to have more game so that they don't lose customers.
Everything I was telling you earlier about wanting to be innocent. They're saying, oh, I've been here, I've been there. I'm like, shut the fuck up. You're talking to some dude. You just want to hear where you've been. He knows you can't be a 10 talking about how you've been to Dubai to some fucking dude in Minnesota who's fat. He ain't going to ever believe that he's going to get you that way. You gotta lie to him. You gotta lie to him. She's like, lie and say what? Say that you've never been anywhere because you don't trust men. You can't find a man who's serious.
Okay. So you see where he's like, all right, look, ladies, if you want to capture men, if you want to get more of their money, we need to lie, and we need to start getting into an area where we're deceiving them on purpose. And we're going to tell them what they might want to hear, or we're going to just indulge in their fantasies. Okay.
Make him think that if he's serious about you, that nothing else matters.
Wow,
you got to put a famoose on it. So I'm trying to teach these women, and the women kept fucking it up. So I said to him, it's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm taking over. So what I did is I unplugged their keyboards and plugged a new one in from me behind the screen. So the chicks would sit there and hit a keyboard that wasn't plugged in. And me and my brother, and eventually some staff I trained, would do all the talking. The girls were just famoosers, just laughing and doing this, their titties out. And they were talking to fucking ice cold hustlers.
Okay. He describes himself as an ice cold hustler that's sitting on the other side of the camera with the keyboard. Presumably he can read the chats. And so now if I'm a young guy and I'm in this webcam and I'm talking to a girl, I'm not talking to a girl. I'm talking to Andrew Tate, and I'm talking, or one of his, one of the people that he's hired to have these conversations. And this person is explicitly telling me things to draw me in, to lure me in and make me believe that there's something more here than really exists. So he's artificially kind of creating this like one-sided relationship with me, right? Because I'm the guy that's on the webcam and I'm like, wow, you're so pretty. And then they're like, yeah, I've never been anywhere. So they're starting to now fill my head with these ideas that, hey, I got some money. I could probably take you somewhere. I could help you out. You're probably only doing this because you have no other options, right? And so this is the game that they're playing.
We're taking their money, all of it. And they come and say, well, what kind of, all of it. We're fucking milking them dry. Women haven't got a clue how to famusa do. I had these guys selling their houses, life savings, loans, all of it to me. Give me it all. So like, and it's basic shit, right? You'd have a guy.
Feel bad or no?
Fuck no. Give a solitary fuck.
Okay. So they asked him 2 years ago, did you feel bad about scamming men out of their money? Now, maybe he's exaggerating on some level. Maybe men aren't taking out loans, but maybe they are. I don't know. All right. But one way or another, he's running what he is describing as a scam on these men, whoever they are, young, old men, whatever. Let's continue.
Did you tell
I don't give a fuck. So I'm famoosing these dudes, right? So the guy would be like, what kind of guys do you like? And if he was a young man, I'd say, I can't believe I'm talking to some young guy. All these old creeps are on here. Oh my God, you're so handsome. Why are you even here?
So
if he was an old guy, I would say, oh my God, I'm finally glad to talk to you. All these young creeps keep coming to talk to me. I want a guy who's serious, who's ready to settle down. I know older men will settle down. Sell the dream, sell the dream, sell the dream. We got to the point where we had these guys falling in love with my models, serious, big time in love, right? Sending crazy money. And they were convinced they were going to meet the chick. This is almost where I kind of felt bad.
Okay. So they've convinced these men, hey, I might meet you. Now, remind you, he just said that he's the one behind the keyboard. Him, his brother, the people they've hired, they're behind the keyboard. They're explicitly running game. That's how we said it back in my day. They're running game on the men who think that they're talking to an actual woman so that they can scam them out of what he describes as millions of dollars because he doesn't care.
Because they're like, can we meet? I've sent you $200,000. Can we meet? Can we meet? Can we meet?
200.
So you got to kind of keep it in the fantasy world. So we learned from this. After this, girls cannot meet guys under any conditions. So what the girls would do is they promise meetings.
All right.
And here,
this is where it really sealed the deal for me. Okay. Like if this is not convincing you that it's fraud, right? He's literally committing fraud upon people. Now it may not fit the legal definition of fraud, but it is fraudulent because you're leading people to believe something that is not true in order to separate them from their money, right? So that's fraud. Now, again, whether this particular case scenario would fall under legal fraud, I don't know. Talk to a lawyer.
maybe this is a bit bad. Here's where the famoose would start. So it'd be good. Like I had a lot of girls who worked for me, and the best was like the Ukrainians or the Russians. It was amazing because they'd get some guy, fall in love, they'd arrange the day to meet, all this shit. I need a visa. Okay, get a visa. I need money for a visa. Okay, how much is a visa? It's $900. No, but it's not $900 because I went to the embassy. They think I'm a risk, and I need a return flight there and back. And I need a hotel. I need to have spending money in my bank account. They won't let me come. How much you need? All right, 10 grand. Boom, it's 10 G's.
Okay, so now we're at the point of the story where we didn't just casually lead men on. Now we're actively. It's not like the first part was more passive. This part is more active because now the girl who's really Andrew Tate, his brother, or people they've hired, as he said in his own words, They're sitting there telling the man, I'm going to come and meet you. But now they start getting into, okay, well, here's the reason why I can't make it. I need an extra $10,000. I need whatever, whatever money they could get out of the guy. I need an extra so much money so that I can go and pay this money because they, the embassy thinks this or that, whatever. Right. So they're now actively running a scam. It went from passive to active for sure.
Thanks. Wow. Go to the embassy, take a picture outside the embassy, boom, come back. They rejected my visa. They said we have to wait 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, they'll give it to me. Okay, baby, boom. 2 more weeks of tips. Boom, 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 boom. Because now he thinks he's going to fuck, right? He thinks he get the girls. Now he's spending more than ever. 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. 2 weeks come. Some other problem. Eventually, the girl, what she would do is she'd say, oh, I don't want to go embassy. She'd give a really lame excuse to try and provoke the man to get angry. So she'd say, the embassy want me to come back, but I have a headache. That was the one we'd use. He'd be like, I just sent you $1 million. You promised you were going to come. You said you had to delay. Now you're saying you have a fucking headache and you won't go to your appointment, to make him mad on purpose, because that would annoy any man. And then that's what we needed. We needed a little trigger. And we go, why are you being aggressive? I'm not being aggressive, but you're not serious. Da, da, da. And then we'd say, but you know what? I really like you and I'm flying to the other side of the world by myself. And now you're being aggressive and now I'm intimidated. And we'd flip it on him saying, well, now you're being scary. No, I'm not being scary, but you know, it's your appointment. You're supposed to go, yeah, but I feel sick and you don't even care. Female bullshit. Bullshit. And flip it on him.
Oh
flip it on him. And he'd get fucking furious because we were really good at fucking poking him to the point where we go like, you're a fucking scammer. You fucking scam me. Get really mad. I can't believe you think I was a scammer. I was going to come. I went to the embassy. You're a fucking liar. Every man in my life has only lied to me. I thought you were different. Da, da, da. Big beef. Big argument. Yep. Big argument. But here's the thing. The guy would get pissed off, right? And leave. Stop tipping her. Stop coming to her. But for these men, that's the only chick in the world, the only hot chick in the world who talks to him. Maybe it takes a week. Maybe it takes 2 weeks. Maybe it takes 3 weeks. And 100% of the time, in less than 3 months, they'd be back with an apology, a brand new pile of money, and the cycle would repeat. We fucking killed the game. Millions of dollars a week.
Okay. That is why I dislike Andrew Tate. So we can argue about whether or not he's guilty or not of the charges that are all over the world. And let me just point out a little bit of logic for people. We know about Hollywood and their debauchery, right? And immorality. We're not talking about just adults sleeping with adults. There's real immorality coming out of Hollywood. We've heard about it from leaders, global leaders. We got the Epstein files that we're still trying to get a hold of, right? So we've got Hollywood. We got the Epstein file. We got the music industry, P. Diddy, all these wild, crazy stories. People coming out and saying, hey, I had to do, I was forced to do certain things. All of these entertainment areas, we've got people of disrepute, terrible people, vile people. But somehow we're supposed to believe that in pornography, which, by the way, pornography is also another area that is rife with its own problems. But all of a sudden, this guy in his webcam business, it's all on the up and up. Like he hasn't done anything that would be illegal of any kind, right? Where he's just doing things that maybe we don't approve of. Right. I'm going to believe that story, not for a moment. Not when we know all these other industries are rife with it. There's no reason to not believe that it doesn't also exist in seedy entertainment like webcam girls. Not to mention, he literally just told us how he scammed men, according to his own words, out of millions of dollars. So if he's willing to scam people out of millions of dollars, what else might he be willing to do? So I dislike Tate because he's on record describing in detail how he scammed men out of millions of dollars, and it was only 2 years ago. He exploited their loneliness and their gullibility for his gain. But now he presents himself as some sort of antidote to the current wave of real problems that we can associate with ideas like wokeness and feminism and all this other stuff, right? He's now the antidote. He is the antidote to the lack of proper masculinity. Like, okay, he was part of the problem of why we don't have proper masculinity, right? He's exploiting men and he's manipulating their emotions to get them out of their money. That's not building. Like if these men are broken and they just happen to be making a lot of money, but they can't seem to get a girl for whatever reason, right? And so they come to the webcam, or maybe they're making a decent amount of money. Maybe they're not making millions of dollars, right? But maybe they're not so lucky out on the dating market. And so then they're like, oh, I'll just get some webcam girls. And then the webcam girls intentionally lead them on to believe that, hey, I could be your girlfriend. We could move this from, we met on the webcam to, wow, I became your wife. Is it absurd? Yeah, it's absurd. Like, where they say, you can't turn a rat into a housewife. I mean, and I don't mean to be super negative. Plenty of women and men do very terrible things and learn from the error of their ways, turn their life around, and become good, respectable members of society. So it does happen. But as a rule of thumb, you're better off thinking, okay, if he or she is involved in certain things, it's not they can change. They probably won't, or until they do, leave them alone, right? So for me, the big issue is that he's led men on in this false sense to keep them bound by that lack of masculinity. But now he's going to turn around and be like, yeah, I'm the antidote. He's literally the meme where, like, pick any of the memes that there are, where you've got one entity that's causing the problem and then later complaining about the problem. That's him. It's exactly what's going on. Now, he might say many of the right things, like I pointed to at the very beginning of the show. He's like, hey, look, he makes some rational points of when you're criticizing like Israel and, certain Jewish people, to be careful to not go so far that you're like, everything is the Jews. So yeah, he says some of the right things. And out of that podcast, the episode for like 3.5 hours, there was a lot of stuff that I myself might have said. But I dislike Tate because I don't think he actually cares about what everyday men care about. And I think he's leading our young men down. I think he's leading them astray. Now, let me play this next clip. So this comes from that episode with him and Patrick Bet-David. I thought this, because I have to justify myself. If I say I don't think that he cares about what everyday men care about, then I should provide some evidence. So here is some of that evidence. That's going to be clip number 3. So here we go.
All of those elements that they don't like are the reason I am the force I am. If I had a perfect, easy little life, I mean, I've had it all the time from these conservatives. They're a pastor and they live in Nebraska and they married their first love and they have a white picket fence and they go to church every Sunday. Great. Good for you. Guess what? Most men in the world don't care what you say because there's no light without dark. And I have enough dark to bring the light. So you have to stop seeing me.
I mean, he just said, I have enough dark to bring the light. He's telling you that on some level, he really doesn't care about the things that you care about. But let's continue, because he's now talking about this fictional preacher from Nebraska, and he's just kind of using that as a stand-in, an example. So let's hear how he talks, because he's already said, like, most men don't care about what you about what you have to say, right? But that's not really true, because how many millions of men willfully interact with their church, attend church, right? Many, many millions of men go to church every Sunday. I know, because on Sundays, I don't always go, but I go and I see many men there. So a lot of men, at least on some level, they care about the preacher, or at least they care about how the preacher's impact on their family. I'll go with my wife, right? Those kind of things. So let's continue.
As your enemy because I don't live the same life you do. That's the reason I have the impact I have. I'm not going to apologize for being me. This once again comes down to jealousy.
There he goes.
The pastor in Nebraska is jealous of me because I will always have more kids than him, because I can bake more bread because I have more ovens. You can be mad. You can hate me for it. You can say I'm the bad guy. But my children are paid for. They're safe. Their women are paid for. Nobody's unhappy. Everybody's happy. That's the scenario that we're all in. It's my life decision. It's their life decision. And it's nothing to do with you. That's the bottom line of it. But they're jealous I have more influence than them.
Okay. So I don't know that it's jealousy, but at the very beginning of the show, I pointed out where Tate himself said, look, if you go too far, you've lost the plot, right? And you do a disservice. He is going too far by criticizing people that everyday men respect. I know 2 preachers, And I respect, well, I know more than that, but I know two that I'm regularly in contact with. I respect them both, not only as men, but also as preachers. Sometimes we have healthy debates about religious views, but I respect them, not because they're a preacher, but because they are about values that I care about. Right? That's why, because they're men that I can have a conversation with and feel better having had the conversation. And we're not talking about some weepy, like, oh my God, thank you, brother, for, thank you for hearing me. Not that kind of, I'm talking about just a general conversation. Like like one of them comes over and we'll have cigars. We'll just sit there and we'll bounce between debate and just conversation. And I'm glad that I've had that experience afterward. I'm like, yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed it. Fun speaking my mind, fun hearing his rebuttals, fun just enjoying some man time together, having some cigars and a drink, right? So I respect them for who they are, not necessarily because they're a preacher. But Tate does not. He's already criticizing. He's like, look, yeah, you have no influence. Nobody cares about you. But that's not true. Let's continue on.
If any of these little pastors or any of these little conservative accounts had any actual influence over the needle or over society, they'd be in jail or they would have caught a case. They didn't. Trump caught a case because he mattered. I caught a case because I mattered.
Okay. Yes, in some sense, that's true. The bigger you become, the more of a target you become to everybody. These are some of the things that he's saying that are absolutely true. But where he's wrong is talking about how, like saying, you know what? You don't have the influence that I have. Yeah, you can say that easily about the Nebraska, the Nebraska pastor in a town of like 500. He's at a limited reach, right? And the truth of the matter is, there's not nearly as much allure to what he's presenting, what he's promoting. However, I want you to think of it this way. He's basically saying that in general, morality is one big grift. Now, there are some names that will defy, like Billy Graham. He was one. Like he could never talk trash about Billy Graham, right? How do I know this? One, he had millions of followers, but more importantly, he mattered to more men in a more meaningful way than Tate will. And we can test this whenever Tate dies. Over 2,000 people showed up to Billy Graham's funeral. Will over 2,000 men show up to Andrew Tate's funeral and be like, man, this guy has really helped me? Not likely. Doubtful. Tate is not a man that I want my son idolizing. However, the reality is that young men, they will have heroes and not all of them will be good ones. Rock stars and bad boys will always have their place in a young person's heart. Girls want the guys that are willing to take a risk, and guys want to be the guy who's willing to take risk. Why? Because young people are working out their place in the world. Part of that includes testing boundaries. Eventually, they find their place, they carve out their spot, and they settle down. This is what happens to the majority of the population. These are the values that most people have. Most people, when they're growing up, they think about finding somebody else at some point, settling down with a good job, a nice house, a spouse that they enjoy, possibly some kids, a dog named Spot, a white picket fence, whatever, right? That's the American dream for most men, at least here in America. I would assume some similar level of dream for many young people all over the world. So where does this put the right-wing community? Well, I believe that the left had a level of social dominance, and then they went overboard. And what we're seeing is a backlash. We're seeing the pendulum swinging back after years of being too far. Think about it this way. Remember the parents that were going to school board meetings and they were complaining about like a handful of explicit books that they found in the library, and they're like, hey, this is not appropriate, and they were even reading the books and they were getting in trouble. Like, remember, they were either shut down, told to leave, or some cases they were thrown out of the school board meeting. Why were they there? They were like, excuse me, This book was in the school library. I have a junior high student. I have an elementary student who can access this book. Let me read to you what it says. And they would read something very, very graphic. And then the school board would be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That's not appropriate here. You're being terrible. And they're like, I'm being terrible for reading to you. We're adults here. This is an adult meeting. I'm reading to you what is available to my elementary school age child. And you're telling me I'm the problem, right? Like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, that was overboard for many parents. People largely care about morality. The conservative right, however, they lack a strong masculine voice. Don't believe me? Here's a clip that I played before. I'm going to play it again because I want to make sure that you get the point.
Vivek Ramaswamy snaps back at Steven Crowder.
Why the hell am I the only person in the Republican Party who has the guts to say English should be our national language?
I know. It's because of the color of your skin.
I disagree with that. I'm going to be back at you, Steve. I'm going to hit you hard for that. That is because the rest of you are freaking lazy. Cowards.
Cowards,
People
yeah.
in this country have common sense. What we really lack is courage.
Yes.
So I'm not going to buy some BS that like my last name or my skin color insulates me. Think about it. I had to step
No,
down.
but that's the perception. You have balls, but other people won't criticize you.
I stepped down from a CEO of a company.
Okay, so that's enough. We don't have to listen to the whole thing. You get the point. People in this country lack courage. Now, you can set aside whether or not we should make English the official language. That in itself is not the point. The point is, if you believe that, then boldly say it. Don't go, man, I wish I could say it. If only I were brown like Vivek Ramaswamy. Well, then I'd be able to say it. No, say it. Be a man if you're a man. Be a woman, be an adult. Act like the adult you are and say, no, we can have this conversation and we can do it intelligently. And I'm not going to be beat up by a side that disagrees with me. Because by doing that, we leave our young people with no one to really follow. Who are they going to follow? Well, they're naturally going to follow the bad boy, right? Like, that's natural. But then once they work that out of their system, who do they really follow? Who are we presenting out there? Because we just sat here and listened to Vivek and Crowder. Both of them have huge audiences. Talk about, hey, and if you listen to further in that clip, Vivek points out, he said, I've got a lot of white friends that tell me I wish I could say things like you. That's a lack of masculinity in this country. And because of that, we are empowering people who are willing to do that. Someone like Andrew Tate can rise up and fill that void because people on the right have become cowardly. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to go out there and just start yelling, dropping F-bombs and insults at people and ha-ha. Like, that's the overcorrection portion of it. But if you believe a thing, if you believe that, hey, you know what? I disagree with this position on COVID. Well, then say so. Inform yourself and be willing to say so. If you disagree with where the president is, what the president is doing, stand up and say so. If you agree with somebody and it's not popular in their circles, stand up and say so. Have some courage to speak out intelligently and meaningfully. Because when we don't, we leave the masculine voices to whoever will. It's kind of like that warning to wives. They say, and they'll say like, have sex with your husband or someone else will. It is true that men should not cheat, period. No ifs, ands, or buts on that. It's also true that many relationships have a void. And we'd love a society where people just had the willpower to disregard that void and not let it get the best of them. But that's not reality. And in the same way that many marriages fail, not just for lack of intimacy, but because there's some void that exists of some level, right? Many young men their lives will fail because there is a void. And what fills that void may not be good. Andrew Tate filling the void, I don't think is a net benefit in the long run. Is it a void that kind of needs filled? Yes. Is he saying many of the things that many people should be saying? Also, yes. But it's coming at a price. So how do we fix this? We need men to act like men. And this is a dad talk show, so I'm going to focus primarily on men. Men need to act like men. That means they cannot be afraid to push back when they believe something's right. I want you to think about the story of Daniel Penny, the man who chokeholded Jordan Neely on the subway, and then he was sent to trial. They found him not guilty. I don't know how many countless men that I saw who said they wouldn't have helped a woman being harassed on a subway because they were afraid of getting in trouble with the government. They didn't say like, oh, you know what, it depends on the situation. Like if I see a woman that's being threatened and there's like 7 dudes there and they all got guns, I'm probably just going to go, hide somewhere and call the police. They didn't say that. They didn't say anything that might be reasonable. What they said was, yeah, what does it get you if you try to help a woman? Look at Daniel Penny. They said that when he got arrested, they said that while he was in trial, and then even afterward, when Daniel Penny came out and said, I would do it all over again. A lot of men were like, yeah, I still wouldn't do it. Really? You're a coward. You're the reason why young men don't have somebody to look up to. Daniel Penny should have been celebrated, not because, he took out somebody that might have been a bad character, but because he had the courage to do what he thought was right in the moment. And whether you're white or black or brown, you should be able to say that about other people who are white, black, or brown, or some variation thereof. If men will not defend women, and men will not even stand up and say, I'm not a racist, what can they be counted on to do? Of course, Andrew Tate is appealing. He will always appeal to young men who have visions of piles of money, fast cars, beautiful women, and respect from other men. That's always going to be appealing to a young man. Why not? Who doesn't want money? Who wouldn't want, if you had the opportunity to have a beautiful woman by your side, drive a nice car, a lot of money, and then respect from other men? That sounds great. The real question is, who are the known men who exude confidence, courage, and wisdom, but without the baggage of immorality that Tate has? Who are those men? Name them. We can't. We all probably know like a friend or a family member, but who in general can men overall look up to? Who can we point to? They can be real or they can even be in fiction. Growing up, many young men wanted to have the rock star life, drugs, sex, rock and roll, and fame and money, right? Like that's, you're 17, you're like, I'm going to learn to play the guitar and I'll be a rock star. Like that was pretty common. But we also at the time wanted to be like Rocky, The Last Samurai, and other fictional characters who we generally in some way considered to be the good guy or who became the good guy. And there's scores of videos where we look and like, yeah, that's what being a man is like. And that is what we need more of that, but we need more of it in real life. We need more Daniel Pennies, not more Daniel Pennies, not in the sense that we need more people chokeholding other people. We need more people who are willing to say, I did the right thing. When they're under fire, I stand firm and say, yep, I did the right thing, even though he could have went to jail. The whole time, Daniel Penny, the whole time, from the time that it happened to the time that he was arrested, that he was on trial, and then even afterward, the whole time, he said, I did the right thing and I would do it again because I could not live with myself if I didn't do the right thing. We need more of that attitude. That's what we need. And we don't have them right now, and it's frustrating. It's just frustrating. And I know that I apologize for being a little bit black-pilled here, but we can expect the pendulum to keep swinging to the right and then eventually and inevitably swing back to the left. There's a reason that we went from the moral majority and the Christian right of the 80s and 90s to literally asking what is a woman in the 2010s and 2020. Think about that for a minute. We had the religious right, which they were on one pendulum swing to the side. They were like really far to the right. Then we moved to a place where you like have to say somebody's pronouns or you might get fired from your job. That became an issue. You couldn't argue and say, I think, a trans person is biologically a male or female. You had to acknowledge and indulge in everything, right? We went from one end to the other. Now what are we doing? We're swinging right on to the right again. Men need role models. Absent those who can bring them from young and wild to old and wise seems to be in short supply today. So I want to end with this clip to illustrate why I think that this is all basically one big grift. This is again from the Patrick Bet-David episode. This is Tate toward the end, kind of talking about, and this is in my opinion, why he was on the episode, why he's getting all the attention right now. I think it has a lot more to do with the politics and the culture of the day than him actually trying to help young men out. I think it's all, again, one big grift. Here we go.
I know everyone says he's a great president, but even when he said he thinks of things I don't often think of, and that's really unusual for me because I like to think I think of everything. But when he sat down with Ukraine, he's like, no, I want 500 billion. Not only do I want to end the war, I want my money back with interest. That wouldn't have crossed my mind. I'm going to be honest. If I was president, I would have tried to fix the war. I would have thought it's a war-torn country, fix the war. I wouldn't have been like, yeah, fix the war plus pay me. He's
Mineral deal.
He is the gangster. He is a G. Trump is exactly the leader America needs. And I am truthfully praying that Vance is next. We can't go back.
Oh, he really wants Vance to be next. Interesting. It's very interesting.
Gentlemen, everyone watching this show, there's a lot of people that feel euphoric because Trump has won, and they feel like the woke mind virus is gone and our enemies are gone. No, our enemies are plotting in the shadows. Our enemies are still using the judicial system and the judges to slow Trump down. Our enemies are still using the media to attack anybody with massive influence, myself, Trump, Elon, etc. Our enemies are still subverting white people into believing that their own race should go extinct via migration. Our enemies still exist, and they're preparing for a counterattack in 3.5 years from now. And if we ever let them win again, if we ever let these people win again, it is over for Western society as we know it.
Wow. That's quite an impressive speech. That's basically all right wing. Hey, we got to keep this momentum. Do you want to go back? Do you want what you had? No, you don't. That's why I hope we get, and I'm repeating what he said. I'm not saying it in my own words, but he's like, that's why he's supporting Vance as the next, as potentially the next president. That's why he's saying, hey, we got to win in a few years here in when it comes to the midterms. We got to keep this momentum going. Otherwise, all those things that you dislike, they're coming back. Suddenly the guy that supposedly is helping millions of men all across the globe, which I highly doubt. Supposedly now he is totally in bed with the right-wing culture, speaking all of their talking points. And if you watch the episode, he literally, like every one of their talking points, he clarifies a few, which seem to be like, let's get you guys back in line so that we don't lose our momentum. But it really, like the whole entire Patrick Bet-David podcast came across to me as, let's get this influencer guy out here, give him a platform, and let's help him keep our momentum going so that the politics of the day advances in the direction that we want. Let's keep a fire under these young men so that they, whenever they go to vote again, or whenever they call and scream at their senators and their congressmen and their city councilmen, right? So all of this creates a vibe, and that vibe goes toward keeping the right in power. I think this is all one big riff. Let's listen to the last few seconds.
It's over for democracy and it's over for humanity. It is our job for these next 4 years, not to sit around being happy and euphoric that Trump's president, but to once and for all crush the woke mind virus, crush George Soros, destroy his NGOs, and get rid of these people.
So I think it's one big grift. I don't think he's helpful to men at all. And I think we have plenty. I think I've demonstrated that crystal clear here. He's talked about making millions, scamming men. We're not talking about he did something that we could disagree with and say, okay, should he be running a webcam business or not? We're not talking about that level of morality. We're talking about a level of morality that most people would agree is wrong, right? It's wrong to try to tell somebody, yeah, I'm pretending to be a girl, or maybe it is a woman, and she's, he thinks he's talking to her when the guy's really talking to Andrew Tate, who's leading him along, suggesting that they're going to get a meet and that maybe this could become something, some long-term relationship, only to manipulate the guy out of all of his money, or as much as, or manipulate him out of as much money as he possibly can. And then now all of a sudden he's going to come in and be like, I'm the antidote to the masculinity problem. We have a masculinity problem. It's not the toxic masculinity. We have a problem where men are, they're not courageous. They're not bold. They're not willing to stand up. And again, you don't have to do it in a radical, crazy word. You don't have to get out there and say F-bombs. You don't have to go out there and insult people to show how tough you are. You can just be like, yeah, I believe this. And no, I'm not going to be bullied out of that belief. No, you're not going to call me a racist or a sexist or a whateverist or a, the phobics, any of the, no, I'm not accepting that. I'm rejecting it. And if we can't have a normal conversation without you just simply insulting me out of your own intellectual laziness, then guess what? We're not having a conversation. I'm moving on without you. Good luck. See you later. Right? That's what we need, but we don't have it. And we don't have good men who exude that level of courage that young men can get behind. So they're getting behind Andrew Tate, which means we're going to get all of his immoral baggage to go along with it. And to be honest with you, I think he's totally a fake. Now, whether or not his charges are legit, that is something the courts can work out. So I'm not going to say that he's guilty of the charges, but he is guilty of being an immoral person and not caring about the same things that he insists all the young men who are looking up to him care about. He does not care about that kind of stuff, young men. So if you're watching and you're like, yeah, but no buts, he's telling you what you want to hear. And he is not going to lead you to where you want to be. He's going to lead you where he wants himself to be, which is more wealthy and more influence. By the way, let's throw this out there. He does not have power. He has influence, but he does not have power. He might get and say something, get on social media and say something crazy, but, and maybe that gets everybody chit-chatting and talking about him. And so he has the influence there, but he doesn't have real power. And how do you know? Because he wouldn't be spending years and years fighting Romanian courts if he had actual real power. He doesn't have the power, young men. He just has the influence because you give it to him. And he's not going to lead you to that life that you actually want to have. That's my show. Let's get into some comments here real quick. All right, let's see what we got. Let's see here. Going down the line. Oh, we got to get some of our music here. So let's see. There we go. A little bit of music here. All right. So yes, that Liberty Lady points out, show support during the show. Send a rant on Rumble. There's the link that you can do that. So yeah, help me out, show. Help me out, show. Help me out, folks. That goes toward making the show that much better. Let's see here. Chagella, Stevie Nicks, quoting Stevie Nicks, tell me lies, sweet little lies. Yes, that is what's happening. Let's see. Joe says, wait, I'm now questioning if it's really DL giving the Bill reviews or Billy overdub. Billy overdub? I'm not sure what that means, but I think it's really me. Pretty positive, but I can't be certain. Kagella, moral junk food exists for both genders. Indeed, it does. Let's see what else we got in here. Kagella also points out the world is full of quiet heroes and heroines. It is true. It is true. But we also need some that have a presence that young men can look up to, whether it's fictional or not. Like, I mean, think about it. If I was a little kid and I wanted to grow up to be Rocky, right? Rocky was what? He was a guy that wasn't such a good character, but he ended up changing his life around, becoming a hero to many, representing his city, Philly, becoming a world famous boxer, like That's not a bad hero to have. Is it real? No. But that's okay. But we've got to have a mix. We got to have our heroes that men can transition to. When you're a young guy, when you're 15, 16, you might be, when you're younger than that, you might be all, well, I like Rambo and I like, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Bruce Lee, people when I was growing up, yeah, I'm going to be a super duper ninja like him. And then you transition, you're like, yeah, I don't know, maybe I'll be like this rock star, right? We go from fantasy to real life. I want to be like this rock star and, maybe have their lifestyle. And then we get a little bit older and we're like, yeah, actually this person, maybe this college professor, they really had an impact on me. And then we get a little bit older and we're like, you know what? The preacher down the road, he comes over and has a cigar with me and we have a chit chat about all things about, life all around. And so we transition as men. We need those men to transition to. And if we don't have them, we're going to leave them high and dry when they get done and move on from Andrew Tates of the world. Let's see. I would say Spike Cohen is a role model for men. He is. He speaks eloquently. He goes and he helps people. He does real good in the world, and we need more of him. Let's see what else we got. Here? Last question here. Liberty Dad, do you have a dad on tonight for Dad Talk? I do, actually. So tonight I will be having a show at 6:30, and we're going to have, he goes by the Armed Bear on social media, but his actual name is, looking up his actual name here because where did it go here? His name is Jay. I'm trying to look for his last name. I don't see it. It's here somewhere in my notes. But anyway, so Jay, who is goes by the Armed Bear, will be on the show tonight, and we will be having our dad talk. So I'm going to try to make up a little bit for the 2 days that I was out, on hiatus here, working on some things. So that's my last question, folks. I hope you enjoyed this show, and I hope now that I have something that when people come and say, well, you just hate Andrew Tate because you believe all these things. No, I dislike Andrew Tate because of what Andrew Tate has done and admitted to, whether or not he's guilty of an actual crime that could be punished. I think he's an immoral, fraudulent person who has taken everybody on the grift train. And I think we could absolutely find many, many better men to hold up in high esteem for our young men to look up to and say, I want to be like him. That's where I am. So hopefully I did that. All right, folks, that's the end of the show. Let's head on out, and I will be seeing you Monday with another fresh bill review. And yes, Joe, it will be me. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com, or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. While you are there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. You can also become part of the community by heading over to libertydad.locals.com. Remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you next time. But for now, I'm out.